Good afternoon. My name is Bretta Speck, and I'm here today to present my research, When to Expect Rational Mate Choice, using Enchenopa treehoppers. I'd like to quickly acknowledge my PhD advisor, Dr. Rafa Rodriguez, my committee members, lab mates, undergrad research assistants, greenhouse manager, and our funding sources. When it comes to mate selection, I think we'd all like to picture it as this ideal situation where you have one male advertising his signal to a female, and she evaluates the signal and then either accepts or rejects him. But in reality, mate selection is happening in a much more complex environment. There are often going to be many males signaling to females, and those females have to evaluate those signals, and oftentimes those signals may come in many different modalities. So it begs the question, does the immediate social context influence mate choice? What's going to happen if she's surrounded by a bunch of very attractive Olympians that are signaling to her? And would it change at all if it was less attractive Olympians signaling to her? We should see for adaptive mate choice, we would expect rationality. And an example of this rationality would be transitivity, where if A is preferred to B and B is preferred to C, then A should be preferred to C. This would maximize Darwinian fitness, and in some studies we do see this. And then it would be maladaptive if we saw irrationality. But irrational mate choice does happen. And example of that would be intransitivity, where again, A preferred to B and B is preferred to C, but somehow C is chosen over A. Some potential causes of this that have been put forth is that maybe it's just so complex, there's so many different signals, so many things that the female is evaluating that she sort of goes into a cognitive overload. Another proposed explanation is that it's actually adaptive at somewhat of a broader ecological level, where she's balancing getting that preferred mating to just ensuring she gets a mating, or balancing ensuring a mating to the risks of predation. So we kind of need to ask, can we predict if these choices are going to be rational or irrational? In order to do that, we need an organism that we have the knowledge of the causes of variation and plasticity in mate choice decisions. And we attempt to do this to predict rational or irrational mate choice using the study species, the Enchenopa BINOTATA treehopper. This is a host-specific insect that uses vibrational communication, the male and female duet, with the male signaling going, ooh, and if the female likes the male, she'll respond with a hum, and they'll continue duetting. Now, the social experiences and the causes of variation in signal preferences has been studied extensively in Enchenopa treehoppers. We know that as young adults, the group composition does not shift any peak preferences, but it does alter strength of preferences and breadth of those preferences. Meanwhile, the lifelong and juvenile group densities, the composition of those groups can shift peak preferences. So on that basis, we expect mate choice decisions are going to be rational in the immediate social context. So to test for this rationality or irrationality in the immediate social context, like I said, we hypothesize that we will find rational mate choice and predict that the preference rankings that we see are not going to change based on the social context. You see here we have a preference function showing signal frequency on the x-axis and responsiveness on the y-axis. And we'll present two different social contexts to our females, the first being the preference peak and the second being the preference bottom. And then we'll present focal stimuli of an attractive and unattractive stimulus. And we'll see, again, do those rankings change? If she's rational, they're not going to change. And in addition, any variation that we do see will be due to just individual differences, not the social groupings. But if we were to find irrational mate choice, we would see a flip in our focal stimuli in what she prefers. We would also see that the variation isn't due to individuals, but is actually due to the social context. So to test this, we run a playback experiment in which we present females with vibrational playback stimuli in our 3 treatment groups or social contexts. We have the control, which doesn't receive a social context, and then the preference peak and preference bottom receive those treatment stimuli, followed by our focal stimuli of attractive and unattractive given in a randomized order. And then we use laser vibrometry to record those female duetting responses. And you can see our results here. Our x-axis has our focal stimuli, and y-axis shows number of responses. The 2 floating points here are our preference bottom and preference peak, number of responses plus or minus standard error. And then I'll show you the results. We have our control, preference peak, and preference bottom with a sample size of 50 tree hoppers per social context. And we find statistically that females prefer the attractive focal stimulus to the unattractive, as expected. The social context does not significantly alter preference rankings or the number of responses. And we have consistent individual differences in both responsiveness and focal stimulus preference. So in conclusion, we can say that the immediate social context did not alter preferences. The variation we found was due to strong individual differences, not their social groupings. And together these results support the rational mate choice hypothesis and form our rationale to say that you can use the background knowledge of the causes and scales of variation and plasticity in order to predict rationality in animal decision making. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.